Hey guys, welcome back. I have another painting update, and this time it's for just some generic D&D monsters. I'm starting off with something very simple, almost like the pests and the generic level 1 monsters most adventurers would encounter. So I managed to paint 3 Stirges and 2 giant rats. All the miniatures come from Citadel, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. Let me do some close-ups, and then I'll talk a little bit about the painting, the modeling aspect, and overall how I'm going to use them for games of otherworld fantasy and other skirmish games. So guys, here are the 3 Stirges. I've used these models a lot for my other Warhammer Fantasy conversions. I believe if you go back to my Tzeentch and my Nurgle, I use the wings for my Furies and I use the faces for like mass, but these are the actual models from Citadel. Again, they were produced in 1985, and they made 4 variations of the Stirges. 4 of them came to each blister you bought, and they are what a Stirge pretty much is: a giant bat mosquito creature. That's the first edition of them. I know as of 5e, they've become a lot more fleshy, a lot more realistic, quote unquote. These are the very goofy original versions. And let me grab one to show you. So this guy here is that like the giant bat look that Citadel was going for based off of the original artwork. And what I like a lot about the detail underneath is they have like little hands, so they kind of grapple onto you and then use their giant nose mosquito stinger to stab and drain you of blood. And I really do love how they sculpted the model. A lot of detail, very goofy, but it matches the original artwork, which is what I fell in love with. And unfortunately, these models are kind of hard to come by. They I guess not many were produced, or they're just hard to find. I'm very fortunate. I still have about, I believe, 16 more unpainted. I'm not sure if I will use all of them, but it's good to have these models. And again, they have a lot of nice detail underneath. Modeling wise, I mean, you can tell I made them very dynamic. I'm trying to avoid using the flying stands, so I decided to give them all of this almost diving positions and trying to be a little bit creative and cute with the basing. So for each of the Stirges, I had to create this bark rock formation and then angle them. I made sure they were relatively in the center of each base, and then you may have noticed I'm using nickels to add some weight to them. And I think overall these guys came out really good. They look really dynamic, and they're all individual. These are all different poses. The variations just vary from the wing detail and the slight faces, but besides that, everything else is pretty much the same. In game, these guys, fighting one of them is a bit of a nuisance. They're about the size of a cat, and because they're like a mosquito bat creature, once they grapple onto you, you're gonna be weakened and feel that sting from the little nose. So when you have more than one, it becomes, I'd say, a minor threat. When you have a pack of them, like 5 or 6, it becomes a real threat. So in games of otherworld fantasy, I might just use the Stirges for a pure monster list, just because I cannot see a real faction commanding Stirges, besides maybe word of command or a certain spell. Painting wise, I actually followed the original art. So they're described as having reddish brown fur, and then their noses are gray at the base with pink at the tips. So I think I managed to get that. The wings I just kept black as it felt very neutral and generic. But here are the 3 Stirges. I will be doing a painting guide for them. Again, I'm kind of painting a bit faster just because I want to get some, I guess, campaign/narrative games in. But I will be back now with the giant rats. And here are the giant rats from Citadel. These are one of the few plastic models I have in my collection at the moment, These guys came from the Fantasy Swarm box, and you're meant to glue, I think, 5 of them to a 40 mil base. I decided to keep them individual as they have a lot of nice detail. The only difference is I used a little bit of a, I think, what's it called? I'm losing it. Like a lighter. So I used a lighter to bend the tails to make it a little bit more dynamic. Fairly straightforward paint jobs. Just a couple of dry brushes of the fur, and then just chose some a nice like flesh tone to pick out the details. So very nice models, very basic. I think they fit the bill pretty well. Game-wise, very generic. Most skirmish games have a giant rat stat. These are meant to be fodder / cannon fodder. Again, I am leaning on using these giant rats in a dungeon denizen army list for the Otherworld faction. I just really can't see for example, I can't see a hobgoblin leading giant rats. Maybe the undead, and you can kind of say they're undead rats, or they just follow the undead because, you know, they're rotten, so they're attracted to the smell. Pretty generic, very fun models to have. I think I have 5 more to paint. Not sure if I'm going to paint all of them, as I think 4 to 5 is plenty. 2 at the moment seems actually pretty sufficient. But yeah, that's the update. Very straightforward, just kind of painting a lot more of the pests. Let me bring in the Stirges now. But yeah, so really happy. I'm getting closer to having, I think, nearly 50 models done for Otherworld and my D&D games. I will make a video kind of showcasing all of the models I've been painting recently. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I will be doing more painting tutorials. It's been really good for me, actually, to paint first, as I'm actually keeping track of all of the paints and the steps I've been doing. So maybe eventually I would not only do a painting video, but just upload on, let's say, like Patreon or something like that, the full painting guide so you can read it, just know the colors, as I really don't see myself making a video for like a giant rat, or I already painted 2 satyrs, so I'm not sure if I'll make another guide, but by having that written text, you can kind of follow along.